Hi guys, in this instructional we're going to go over how to lay out a set of stairs. For this particular set of stairs, we have a completed deck here. So we're going to go ahead and do a set of stairs off of this deck. So the first thing for any step or any set of stairs that you are going to lay out is you need to figure out your overall height. So for this for this project, this never happens. We're in a garage here. We have a nice flat floor. It's nice and level. So theoretically, what you should be able to do is measure down from the very top finished layer of your deck. So in our case here, it's going to be the top of our deck board here. If we were doing a set of stairs inside of a house, that would be the finished layer of the finished flooring. So if you're laying out stairs, it might not necessarily be the OSB subfloor. It might be that extra layer of flooring. So make sure you take that into account. Again, for our project here, it's going to be the top layer of our deck board here. So what we can do is we can come down straight from the top of our deck and get a measurement. I'm right at 26 3/4. And like I was beginning to say here, we're in a controlled environment. Our floor is nice and flat, but this scenario usually never happens. I'm going to be 26 3/4 out here at the base of my stairs as well. But let's say we were in a typical yard. This deck was coming off the front of a house, and our ground isn't perfectly flat. So it's a good idea to get a measurement right where I took it, but then you also want to come straight out from our stairs and guess where our stairs are going to land. So the reason why you take that measurement there is to get your rough estimate. Like I said, I'm 26 3/4. So a typical stair height or run, or rise, I guess you should say, a typical stair rise would be between 6 and 8 inches. So I'm going to go ahead and take that greatest rise of 8 inches, divide that 26, and I'm going to have just over 4. So I know that I'm going to have about 4 steps coming out, and also a typical run for a set of stairs is between 10 and 11 inches. So I'm going to go ahead and just estimate the greatest of 11, and I should come out about 44 inches. So coming out about 44 inches here, and I'm just eyeballing, doesn't have to be perfect. It's going to be about right here. So what I'm going to do is from that point of 44 inches, I'm going to bring a level out and hold level. I would have somebody checking. Again, I'm in a garage here. I know this floor is level. But then I would take that reading from my level point to the bottom of my level, and that's where those stairs would land. So if you can kind of imagine, if we had a really steep slope here, that measurement's not going to be the same, but you're going to want to take it from the bottom of the stairs because that's where your stairs are going to land. If you took it at the ground and you built your stairs to that measurement, your bottom step of your stairs could be 2 feet in the air, whatever that slope is going to be. So you want to make sure you take that measurement right where the bottom of your stairs is going to land. So now that we have that measurement, we're going to go with that 26 3/4. We can come over here and start to do some math. All right, so any set of stairs, like I was beginning to mention before, your typical run is going to be 10 to 11 inches, and your typical rise is going to be about 6 to 8 inches. So what I like to do is I go ahead, get my calculator out here, and I'm going to figure out how many stairs or how many steps I'm going to need. So what you do is you take that 26 3/4 measurement that we got, that's our total height, and I'm going to divide it by that greatest measurement of 8 inches. And the reason why you do that is you want to get a set of, or how many steps you're going to get. And I have 3.34. So I know that I'm going to have more than 3 steps. So I'm going to go ahead and round that up to the highest number, or to the next number, which would be 4. And I'm going to go ahead and select 4 steps. And that might not be the final set that we're going to do, but it's a good number to start. The other thing I'm going to point out here with that 4 steps, and this is where it gets a little bit confusing, is I'm going to go ahead and act as my rim joist as the last rise. So I'm actually going to have 1, 2, 3 steps. It's going to run into my rim joist here, and my last step will actually be my deck. The reason why we do that is if I didn't subtract that last step, I would have an extra little bit of decking come out here, and it's just not really needed. You added a whole extra 11 inches or 10 to 11 inches of run to your set of stairs. It's just a waste of material and not as aesthetically pleasing. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract that 1 step, knowing that my last step will be my rim joist and my deck. All right, so now that I have that information, I'm going to go ahead and start writing some of it down here. My total height or total rise is going to be 26 3/4 of an inch. I know that my overall goal, because it's going to fit within that sweet spot of 6 to 8 inches, is going to be 4 steps. Within that, I know I'm going to take that top step off, but I still need that top step to do my math correctly. So ideally, when my set of stairs will be done, I'll have 3 steps that I attach to the deck, with that 4th step being my rim joist. So now that I have this information, I know that I'm going to take my 26 3/4, which is my overall rise, and divide that by 4 steps. And I come out with 26 3/4 divided by 4 is 6.6875. And that's a decimal now, so my tape measure reads in fractions. So what I'll do is I'll do that 0.6875 times 16, because I want to figure out what it is in 16ths, convert that back to a fraction, and I get 11, meaning 11/16. So that measurement is going to be 6 11/16. That's going to be my riser height. And I'm going to go ahead and take that measurement because it's between my 6 and 8. That's a good sweet spot for a step. That works out perfect. And now for my run, what I'm going to do is just a little bit of heads up for my design of my stairs here. I'm going to have a 1.5 inch 2x6 for my stair treads. And I'm also going to have a 1x material riser in back of my tread. So as my set of stairs comes down here, I'm going to have 3/4 of an inch of riser. I'm going to have 1.5 inches of step. And I'm using 2x6. And ideally, I can go ahead and figure this out to where I'm going to have exactly a 1-inch overhang, which for this particular deck, I have a 1-inch overhang coming all the way around. And I want to figure it out so I can just use 2 deck boards without having to make any cuts. So I have 3/4 of an inch of deck board. I have 5.5 inches of, 3/4 of an inch of riser, 5.5 inches of deck board, and another 5.5 inches, and I want to end up with a 1-inch overhang. But as you'll find out here in a second, as I lay this out, I make a special adjustment where I don't really have to think about this, this riser board. It's just going to come out perfectly. Okay, so I have my 3/4 inch of riser. I have 5.5 and 5.5 worth of deck board. So that's going to be 11 inches of deck board, 5.5, 5.5, plus my 3/4 is going to be 11 3/4. And I want to take 1 inch off of that because I want my overhang to have exactly 1 inch. So 11 3/4 minus 1 inch is going to be 10 3/4. And that 10 3/4 is what my run is going to be for my stringer. So I have my magic numbers here. I have 6 11/16 as my rise and 10 3/4 as my run. So what I can do is I can come over here to the rest of my 2x12 here, and I should note that most stringers, if not all stringers, are going to be made out of at least a 2x12. The reason for that is, if you can imagine, we're going to be cutting out our steps here, and you want to have a good amount of meat left in the back of the board here to be able to support your stringers. if you were to use, let's say, a 2x10 and cut these stairs out, and you only had about 1.5 to 2 inches of wood back here, your stairs are going to fail, and it's not going to be a very strong set of stairs. So, excuse me. What we're going to do to lay out our stairs is we're going to go ahead and use a framing square. And this is going to be a useful tool because, one, it's perfectly square, and our steps are going to create a 90-degree angle. And two is it has a ruler on this edge as well as a ruler on this edge. And we're going to reference both of those at the same time to get our rise and our run. I should also note that when using these framing squares, you want to make sure that you use the same edge on both sides. So, as I said, there's a ruler on both sides. There's also a ruler on both sides on the inside as well. If you're going to use the outside of the square, make sure you use the outside on both sides. If you're going to use the inside, use the inside on both sides. If you use one or the other, your layout is going to be wrong. So stick with the same side and just pick one. So I typically use the outside of the square here. And what I'm going to do is I usually lay out from right to left. And I also do my run first. So I'm going to come to the edge here. And what I'm looking for is I come out here to my 10 3/4. This is going to be my run. And I'm also going to come out here to my 6 11/16. Right? 6 and 11/16. And I'll go ahead and make my first mark. So come out to the edge here. And what I'm doing is I've come out to 10 1/2. And I'm lining that, 10 3/4. And I'm lining that right up with the edge of my board. And I'm coming out to 6 11/16 on this side. Again, using the outside on both sides. And lining it right up there. And now I have my run and I have my rise. So using a nice sharp pencil, I'm going to go ahead and scribe this framing square here. And then you can remove the square, and I'm going to come up and make my next set of stairs here. So right where this line intersects the edge of the board, I'm going to go my 10 3/4 again, and my 6 11/16. Being very careful to make sure I'm lining up right with this line, and I'll go ahead and make my next set of marks. So now that I've got my first two marks here, if you can kind of imagine ahead a little bit, I'm going to go ahead and extend this line, and it's going to make a little bit more sense here. This first line that I established was basically going to be my floor. So I went ahead and drew that all the way across. This is going to be my first rise, and now this is going to be my first step. So I have my second rise here. I'm going to finish drawing my second step, going right at 10 3/4, 6 11/16, and draw another triangle. Okay, so floor, first step, second rise. Going to draw my third stair here, 10 3/4, 6 11/16. Draw that next line. So if you remember from describing our set of stairs here, I'm going to chop off that fourth stair, again because that fourth stair is going to be our rim joist. So I have 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps, and now this last rise that I drew is going to become the back wall, or in our case, the rim joist. So you can start to see our stairs taking shape here. We have our 1, 2, 3 steps. Fourth one got cut off. This is going to be our wall, and this is going to be our floor. So this essentially is going to be our finished stringer that we can start to think about cutting out. But there's two measurements here that we want to consider before actually cutting this out. The first one is we want to take into account our deck board. If our bottom step here, if this was our floor and we put a deck board on top of that, that's going to be an extra 1.5 inches of height to our stairs. We're going to do that to every single one of our stairs. what's going to happen is this bottom step is going to be 1.5 inches too high, and this top step is actually going to be 1.5 inches too short because we didn't account for this deck board. So what we're going to do is we're going to account for that right now. I'm going to take 1.5 inches off, and in our tool instructional you can learn a little bit more about framing squares, but this short leg here is exactly 1.5 inches. So I'm going to go ahead and line that up with our floor line here, and I'm going to account for that 1.5 inch thickness of deck board and do our actual cut line. Extend that all the way out here. And now we're going to cut on this side of the line here, and this will be our final stair height. And make sure we don't cut that line. We need this line for theoretical measurements, but this is going to be our final line here. The other thing too is same kind of concept. We're going to put 3/4 inch of deck board, stair riser all along the back of our rises here. So we're going to have 3/4 here, 3/4 here, 3/4 there. If we didn't account for that 3/4 inch on the top step, we would be 3/4 inch too long on our top step and 3/4 inch too short on our bottom step. So from our wall measurement here, I'm going to come exactly 90 degrees in. I'm not measuring along our board here. I'm going to take that measurement square from our wall cut and come in 3/4 inch and come in 3/4 inch. Connect that line. And now this is going to be our cut line up here. So now we will take these measurements into consideration. We'll cut this stair stringer out, and you'll see in a minute when we actually put this into place, those measurements and how they actually come into play. All right, so I got my circular saw out. Again, this is another one of those operations that you want to take a little extra time. Make sure that your table is completely square to your blade. I should say you want to make sure it's square because this first stringer that you cut out, you're going to use as a template for the rest of your cuts. So you want to take a little bit of extra time and make sure that you cut right on the line. You have a nice square cut because this is going to become your template. So I'm just going to demonstrate a little bit here. You don't have to watch me cut this whole thing out. But basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here, cut my first rise here, cut my floor cut, and then I'm going to come in here and cut out each of these triangles. And it's really important to note when you cut these triangles out, you're going to cut one on the inside of this line. This is the triangle that you're going to remove. You don't want to cut into your stair stringer because then you'll be 1/8 inch too short because of your saw kerf. But I'm also going to stop right on my intersection here, and because this is a circular saw, I wouldn't have cut all the way through on the bottom. I'm going to have to come back in with either a Sawzall or a handsaw, something with a straight blade, and finish that cut. It's really important not to go past your line just to get this piece of scrap out of here, because that's going to weaken your stringer, and we don't want any of that. So I'll go ahead and just cut this bottom part out here, demonstrate how I use a Sawzall to get this inner part out, and then I'll cut the rest of this off of camera. All right, I got my first triangle cut out. I'm going to switch to a Sawzall here and get the rest of this triangle cut out. Okay, I got my Sawzall here, and again, the reason why I'm doing this is a nice straight blade, and I want to get a nice crisp corner, 90-degree corner in here. I don't want to cut past with my circular saw because that would weaken my stringer. So you can just come right in here. Finish the cut going that way, and go ahead and finish the cut going the opposite way. All right, once that cut is finished, many times you'll have just a little bit of cleanup to do. You can just get a nice sharp chisel, follow the angle of that tread there, get that corner nice and crisp. Again, you want a nice 90-degree cut here because this first stringer you're going to use as a template for the rest of your stringers. So get these corners nice and crisp and nice and clean, and you'll be able to have a nice clean template. I'm going to go ahead and cut out the rest of this stringer, and we'll be ready to cut out the rest after that. Okay, our stringer is cut out. I went ahead and cleaned up our edges here. And the next step would then be to go ahead and lay out the rest of your stringers. I guess to figure out the amount of stringers that you're going to need, your stringer should never exceed 16 on center. So basically what I do is I figure out the width of my stairs here. It's going to be from post to post. I'm roughly 3.5 feet. And I know that if I go basically 3 stringers, one on the outside, another one on the other outside, and then one in the middle, that's going to be over 16 inches on center. So I'm going to go ahead and just bump it up to 4, and I'll figure out the exact spacing when it comes time to install the stringers. So I have my first stringer here. I know I'm going to need 3 more after that. So unfortunately, I already cut my stringers off camera. This is the rest of my 2x12 here, but you kind of get the concept. You would take your original template stringer here, and you would lay it right on the back. You would get that flush edge of the 2x12 that's remaining, nice and flush with the your new 2x12 that you're going to be cutting. And you would take a pencil, you would make sure it's nice and sharp, and you would just go along here and trace the whole thing out onto your new board. And 2 important things to note, that stringer that you originally cut, that first one that you laid out, you're going to want to write template on it, and you're going to want to use that same stringer for every single one of your stringers that you cut out. The reason being is as you trace it onto another board, the chances of you getting it exactly the same dimension as this first one isn't very good. So let's say you were building a set of stairs that were 8 feet wide and you had 10 or 12 stringers to lay out. If you keep using the stringer that you cut out from the previous cut, your line might grow a 32nd of an inch or so because of that pencil lead width. If you do that throughout the whole set of cuts, that's 10 32nds that you've added to your set of stringers, and now your stringers aren't going to be the same. So if you use that template on every single cut, you might be off just a little bit, but you're only going to be off that little bit on every single stringer. So with that being said, as you trace your stringer onto your new board here, your goal when you cut this out is to just erase that pencil line, because it's going to be that pencil lead width a little bit bigger. So you're not your trace line that you put on here is going to be just a little bit bigger. So you want to erase that lead line with your circular saw, and that'll be about as close as you can get it. So remember those 2 things. Always use your first one as your template. Use that for every single stringer you lay out. And as you cut them, try to erase that pencil line, and your stringers will come out pretty darn close to each other.